vegan croissants. Hey guys, what's up? My name is Britt and I am the vegan food blogger behind the Banana Diaries. And today we are making these amazing, fluffy, and perfectly layered, about 27 layers in there, croissants. They're entirely vegan, eggless, dairy-free. They're so fluffy, perfect. They have that nice crisp outer shell, and they are just a dream to enjoy, especially with a cup of coffee. Croissants are actually quite simple to make. It's just a multiple day process, so it takes some time and patience, but the actual hands-on work is not as complicated. So follow these instructions and you're gonna have the most perfect vegan croissants. Let's begin. Bit of a different setup today. I thought that we'd focus really on the technique here. So we're gonna start by making our dough, and we're gonna do it in the stand mixer with the dough attachment. I'm just adding in the sugar here with the flour, and then next up we're gonna add in quick rise yeast. I go over this in the blog post, but I recommend using quick rise yeast over regular dry active yeast. Just gonna dump that into the bowl there. And next up, we have a little bit of salt just to counteract the flavor of the sweetness and make sure that our croissants are very well rounded. And now we're just going to mix the dry ingredients all together until thoroughly combined. Then we're gonna add in cold dairy-free milk. You can use soy milk, almond milk, oat milk, whichever you prefer. Here I'm using soy milk, and then we're going to begin to mix the dough. It will look shaggy at first, don't worry. Once we add in the vegan butter, which we'll do right here, then it will start to come together and be a more smooth dough, but it'll take a little bit. You can make this dough in a bowl with a wooden spoon or with your hands as well, and just knead it in the bowl. Once our dough is nice and smooth, you can see it right there, we're just going to cover it in a clean bowl and we're going to chill it. This is going to be our long rest. I recommend resting it for about 3 hours in the fridge, but there is also an overnight option. I'm gonna go over all the different schedule changes and different timelines in the blog post. But once you're ready to roll out the dough, we're gonna make our beurrage layer, which is just the butter layer. And here I'm just measuring out a 10 by 14 inch rectangle. So instead of drawing, I'm just marking it on the parchment paper, and then I'm gonna fold the parchment paper pieces to basically create a crease. And that is going to help us make our beurrage. The butter is at room temperature, so it's going to be really easy to spread that. And once we folded that, then we'll just spread the butter onto the parchment paper and use our creases to help us make a really, really nice and clean cut rectangle, because we do want those sharp corners. We really want this to be exact. So for vegan butters, I recommend using Miyoko style vegan butter. It is a European style, which is typically what you'll use to make croissants. You can use earth balance sticks, but I don't recommend it as much as I recommend the Miyokos, and definitely stay away from using the tub of vegan butter. So once you have the vegan butter all smoothed out, we're going to wrap up our beurrage and we're going to chill it for another 30 minutes in the fridge right before our dough is ready to be rolled out, and then we'll encase the butter into our dough. So here we have the dough, it's risen a little bit. We're just going to lightly flour a clean surface. I like to work on this silicone mat that actually has a ruler on the sides of it. So right here, I'm marking where I'm going to roll the dough to be. So it's gonna be 10 inches by 14 inches. So I actually made a mistake. It's 10 by 7 inches for the beurrage, and then 10 by 14 for the dough. And this is so that we can properly encase our beurrage and that everything is completely sealed. And you'll notice that I'm really trying to make these sharp corners for the croissant so that everything is super even. So once you're ready, you're just going to place the butter layer right in the middle of our dough, and then we will fold back the dough to encase the butter. And it's okay if the butter hangs a little bit over the dough. You can just slightly cut it, and then you'll seal off the butter by pinching together the end pieces of the dough like you'll see here. All right, and now our butter is completely encased. And I'm just going to start to roll it a little bit longer so that we can make our first lamination. And just go gently here because you don't want to break the butter. So if you saw, I was kind of working the dough a little bit just by lightly and gently pressing the rolling pin into the dough to kind of get the butter working a little bit more. And now we're going to make our first fold, so it's kind of like a letter fold. We're going to fold it in thirds. You can also do the book fold where you fold it in half, but I think that this makes a really, really nice lamination and tons of layers of the flaky, buttery goodness that comes with croissants. So there's definitely many different techniques for lamination. This is just one of them. And then now we're working on our second lamination here after we've rested the dough. And this is going to be our book fold. So I just folded the ends to meet each other, and then we just fold it again, and it creates tons of layers. Look at that. It's beautiful. We're just going to wrap this up and rest it for about an hour. You can do 30 minutes. It just really depends on how cold your dough is. If you haven't worked it too much too, you also don't want to overwork your dough or else you're going to get very tough croissants. But now we're on to our third lamination. So again, I'm being really gentle with the dough, and I'm first gently rolling it and kind of pushing the butter, and then I'm going to go in with these big long rolls. So notice I'm not rolling back and forth really fast. I'm doing it nice and slow here. And it's okay too if you notice that there are a few little air bubbles. As you roll it, the air bubbles will kind of work their way out. But now we're going to do another lamination here. So we're just going to do the letter fold once more and fold it in thirds. And if at any point your dough is resisting you, you can just put it back into the fridge and rest it for 30 minutes and then take it back out and continue on with the step that you're on. But now we're going to rest it one more time, and this can be the long rest too, before we begin to fully shape our croissants. All right, now that our dough is nice and chilled, it is time to roll out the dough for our shaping of the croissants. So just going to, again, be really gentle. We work so hard on those butter layers. We do not want to ruin them. You have so many layers of lamination in there right now that you just want to be gentle. This is very much a patience game with vegan croissants or croissants in general. So just take your time with this. And here we're just rolling it out to be about 10 inches by 20 inches. It doesn't need to be super exact here. For once, you don't really need super exact, which is great. And now we're going to begin to make our marks for where we're going to slice our croissants. So this is a trick I actually learned from Joshua Weissman. We're going to mark our croissants every 4.5 inches. And that will yield us about 8 to 10 croissants, depending on if you're going to make the end pieces. But I always do because, of course, I don't want to waste any dough. They're just not going to be the most perfect of the croissants. The others will be totally fine. And then what I'm doing here is I'm actually going in between the marks that I just made and marking it at the top. And then I'm going to connect those lines and make little diagonals. So you'll see in just a second here. So I'm just connecting the top to the bottom and going basically like every other one is going to be opposite. So just continue slicing the croissants into triangles like this. And I do recommend using a pizza cutter or a very large kitchen knife because that will help you. I'm just setting those aside, and I'm going to first roll our perfect croissant. So I'm just gently stretching the croissant dough a little bit, about 1 inch extra, and then I'm rolling very tightly from the bottom of the dough and then going to rest it on the tip of the croissant so that it doesn't unroll. And I'm just going to continue doing this with all the dough, and then we'll place them onto 2 different baking sheets. So we have 2 baking sheets lined with parchment paper, and that's where our croissants are going to rest. And once that you have all the croissants rolled, it is time to figure out what to do with our end pieces. So I'm actually just going to twist these together, and you can make any shape that you want. You could even maybe try a knot with the croissant dough and just shape it however you want. It'll just be a different shaped croissant, and it's still delicious. So now it's time to put our croissants onto the baking sheet, and then we're going to brush them with the vegan egg wash. If you look at how many layers there are. Oh, it's just beautiful. All right, and now we're just going to use basically a combination of maple syrup and soy milk. This acts as a wonderful egg wash that will also help prevent the croissants from forming a hard shell while they're resting and proving. So I'm just gonna brush them generously with this vegan egg wash, and then we're actually gonna do it a second time too after they're done resting. And again, make sure that you're placing the croissants onto the tip of the croissant like this. So you don't want it up like that. You're going to just flip it over like that so that the croissant doesn't unroll while it's proving and also while it's baking. So we're just gonna cover those with a clean dish towel and let them rise for about an hour in a semi-cool area, and then they'll puff up really nicely like this. You can see all of the wonderful layers of lamination in there. And then we're gonna finally just brush them lightly with another layer of the vegan egg wash. And then they're ready to bake. And in just a few moments, you're gonna have completely baked, beautiful vegan croissants that look like they came from a bakery. And by the way, your kitchen is gonna smell absolutely amazing, so I highly recommend making these if you have any guests staying over for a holiday breakfast. They're just absolutely delicious. These are just so perfect. They smell like they came from a bakery. They are so many layers. Look at that, that's like 27 layers there. It's amazing. All right, I think that we should slice into one of these and try some. So, oh, but first of all, like, do you hear that? That's like so nice and crisp. Wow, that's awesome. Wow, that's awesome. Wow, these are just, they're so lovely. Like, look at the nice hollowness inside. I'm pretty proud of these, and I know that you're just gonna love them. So let's do the bite, the taste bite, or wait, what is it called? Taste test. Let's do the taste test now. The salt gives it just like the perfect hint and balances it out, because there's a nice sweetness to the dough. It's just buttery, lightly sweet, a little bit of salt to balance it. They're perfect. You'd honestly never know that these are vegan. Wow. So if you like the recipe, be sure to give it a big thumbs up and hit that subscribe button and the bell notification. And remember that the full recipe is found down below, linked in the description box. So be sure to tap the arrow, and then recipe link is right there. I'm also giving you an example, day 1 and day 2, 2 times. So do 2 different ways if you want to have your croissants completely baked and ready for the morning, or if you are fine with baking them a little bit later in the day. So both options are there for you as the example schedules. And yeah, be sure to also leave it a rating too on the blog, because it helps other people decide if they want to make the recipe. And I just know that you're gonna love them. They taste just like croissants, and now you can have them vegan. So I can't wait to see you on the next one. I'll see you later. Bye.